Welcome to the deep dive. You flagged some really interesting stuff for us this time, these excerpts from Sarah Knight's Calm the Eck Down.
Yeah, it's quite direct, isn't it?
It is. So our goal today for this deep dive is really to pull out the practical strategies, the useful ideas from this book, to help everyone listening get a better handle on worry and anxiety.
Exactly. And the core of it is what she calls the NoWorries Method, which is, well, basically two steps. First, you calm the heck down.
Right. Take a breath.
Yeah, just pause. And then step two is deal with it. Figure out what you're actually going to do. It's very action-oriented.
And the language, yeah, it's strong, but maybe that directness is part of the point.
I think so. It cuts through the noise sometimes.
One of the first things she tackles is how much worry is tied up in what if
Mm.
questions. What if this bad thing happens? What if that goes wrong?
Right. And we can imagine good what ifs too, like finding money or something great happening at work.
Sure, but the anxiety often focuses on the negative side.
Yeah.
She even jokes about, like, a sudden global coffee shortage or wine, maybe.
Ha! Yes, those existential crises for some people. It highlights how our minds can latch onto these possibilities.
And she defines worrying in two ways, which I found interesting. It's not just the anxious fretting.
No, it's also that unproductive fiddling with a problem in your head, like constantly picking at it but not actually solving anything. The book uses an analogy of a loose thread on a sweater, just pulling and pulling.
Making it worse, yeah. Or like a
Wow.
song stuck in your head, just looping.
Exactly that. Unproductive mental noise.
Okay, so let's dig into worry itself. The book really emphasizes how, well, common it is,
Hmm.
how much mental space it occupies for so many of us.
It really does. And it lays out some key lessons early on, like lesson #4. A lot of the stuff we worry about, it's probably not going to happen at all.
That's kind of freeing, actually, just thinking about that.
It can be, and it leads right into lesson #5. We're not completely helpless. We can prevent some worries, or at least, lessen the blow of others.
So it's about being proactive where possible.
But then there's lesson #6, which is maybe the hardest one. Some things are just totally out of our control.
Right. The book uses the example of, like, the queen or any head of state.
hmm
They're just things you have to accept. You can't change them. Let it go.
Precisely. And you just have to focus on what you can influence.
She shares some really relatable personal stories, too. Like
Her.
her husband's birthday picnic getting rained out,
Oh, yeah, and how much that threw her off, and the raclette cheese incident.
the raclette meltdown. These aren't, global catastrophes, but they show how easily small things, unexpected things, can derail us when our expectations are fixed.
And that's key to how the book talks about preparing for the unexpected. It's not about trying to meticulously plan for every single crazy possibility.
Because that would drive you mad and probably bankrupt you.
Right. Instead, it's about cultivating a different mindset, a kind of mental flexibility for when things inevitably go sideways.
Like the tarantula story, that really stuck with me. The first time she saw one near the house, total panic.
Understandable panic.
Totally. But the second time, she still reacted, obviously, but it was more contained. It was like she'd been, I don't know, trained by the unexpected a little bit.
Exactly. You develop a bit more resilience, maybe, a different response pattern.
And that connects to her idea of everything is a tarantula, that feeling of unease when you can't pin down why you're anxious.
Yeah, that vague dread.
Yeah.
The book pushes you to not just sit with that, but to actually ask, okay, hold on, what is really bothering me here?
Because often it's not some huge, scary unknown. It's something specific you can actually address. A work thing, a difficult conversation.
Or just feeling generally overloaded, but identifying it is the first step to dealing with it.
So how does all this worry actually cost us? The book brings in this idea of freak-out funds.
Right. Time, energy, and money. And she argues that worry is basically wasteful because it drains these funds without giving you anything useful back.
It's like paying for anxiety. Think about the last time you were really stuck worrying. How much time did you lose? How drained did you feel?
Exactly. And the book looks at how we misuse these funds in different freak-out phases, as she calls them, like overthinking.
A housefly analogy.
Yeah.
Buzzing around, never landing. So unproductive.
Spot on. And the advice is quite direct. Miyagi that shit. Focus. Channel that energy onto one problem at a time.
Makes sense. Stop the frantic buzzing.
Then there's the feeling depressed state. Not clinical depression necessarily, but just feeling utterly exhausted by it all.
Yeah, just drained. And anger, too. Anger uses up so much energy.
A huge amount, and it often makes things worse, right? Like the example of getting mad at your phone and breaking it. Now you have two problems.
Definitely been there, metaphorically speaking.
And the last one is avoidance or ostriching, putting your head in the sand.
which feels like you're saving energy,
Mm.
maybe, but you're actually spending it pretending things are fine.
Exactly. You're using energy to maintain the illusion instead of tackling the actual issue. And usually the problem just gets bigger while you're ignoring it.
The book adds a fourth fund, too, which is really interesting, goodwill.
Ah, yes. This is about how constantly freaking out affects the people around you.
If you're always panicking about everything, people might start to tune you out, right? Like the boy who cried wolf.
Yeah.
Or shark in the book's version.
Yeah, the boy who cried shark. You risk burning out your support system, so when you genuinely need help, they might be less responsive.
That's a really important point. And the book does acknowledge that, look, some people genuinely do have more reason to be anxious, maybe due to anxiety disorders.
It does. It's not dismissive of that at all. But it still emphasizes personal responsibility in managing it. The analogy used is about chronic health issues.
A bit blunt, perhaps, but the point is.
The point is, even with ongoing challenges, finding coping strategies and ways to manage is still crucial. You still have agency in how you respond.
Okay, so all this leads towards actually doing something. The method itself, she calls it mental decluttering.
I like that framing. It's like KonMari for your brain, maybe? Tidying up your thoughts.
Maybe. And a key tool is the probometer, your personal gauge for how likely a shitstorm is.
Yeah, her term, not ours. But it's about assessing probability. And crucially, it's your personal assessment, not objective risk, but how likely you think it is for you.
And there are 5 categories, right? From highly unlikely.
All the way to inevitable. Highly unlikely, possible. But not likely, likely, highly likely, inevitable.
It's the probability, not how bad it would be. That's a key distinction.
Absolutely key. A small, likely annoyance might need more practical planning than a huge, highly unlikely disaster, like the skiing example she uses.
Right. If you never ski, worrying about a skiing accident is category 1, highly unlikely. But if you're on the slopes every weekend.
Then the probability shifts and maybe you take more precautions. It's relative to your situation.
So the exercise is list your what-ifs, actually write them down.
And then assign them a category on your personal probometer. She shares her own example worrying about a car crash going to the airport. She puts that in category 2. Possible, but not likely.
And the insight is that when you do this, you often realize a ton of your worries are category 1 or 2.
Yeah. Stuff that realistically you can probably give yourself permission to stop actively worrying about.
Okay, but what if the worry feels closer? The book talks about imminent shitstorms.
Right. Things that aren't just vague possibilities anymore, like a deadline tomorrow you haven't met, or an exam you feel unprepared for. They're right around the corner.
And then there are total shitstorms.
The ones that have already landed, they're happening now. Could be big, could be small, like the funny example of your kid becoming a massive YouTuber overnight. It's here. Deal with it.
The quiz in the book helps clarify this, doesn't it? Like worrying about messing up at work versus your boss actually finding the mistake.
Or worrying your car might break down versus it actually being broken down on the side of the road. It shifts from potential to reality.
And if you've got multiple things going wrong at once, multiple shitstorms.
Prioritize. You can't put out all the fires simultaneously. Figure out what needs your attention right now. The example of the fan belt versus the epidural.
A bit extreme, but it makes the point. Focus on the most urgent thing first.
Exactly. Triage the situation.
So you've identified the worry, gauged its likelihood, its imminence. What's next?
The big question. The one question to rule them all, as she calls it. Can I control it?
Simple but powerful.
Very. And the path forks here. If the answer no, you can't control it.
Then the goal is acceptance. Let it go. Calm down. That's step 1 of the method.
Right. Accept reality. If the answer is yes, you can control it, or at least influence it.
Then you move to step 2. Deal with it. Make a plan. Take action.
But there's a tricky middle ground, isn't there? When you know you can't control it, but your brain just won't switch off the worry.
Yes, that hamster wheel feeling.
That's where she introduces PHEW. Productive, helpful, effective worrying.
PHEW. Yeah. So it's like channeling the worry energy.
Kind of. It acknowledges you can't stop worrying, but asks, can you do something productive related to the worry, even if you can't control the ultimate outcome?
Like the example of worrying about your kids becoming good people. You can't control that 100%.
No guarantees. But you can take PHEW actions, teaching them things, setting an example, having conversations, things that make the desired outcome more likely.
Or worrying about a gift, you can ask someone who knows the person better. That's a PHEW action.
Or seasickness, you can take medication beforehand. It doesn't guarantee you won't feel sick, but it's a helpful, effective action related to the worry.
So PHEW is for when you can't just let it go, but you want to do something constructive rather than just fret.
Precisely. But the book is clear. If the answer to can I control it is truly no, then acceptance really is the goal, however hard that might be.
Okay, so what about practical ways to stop the worry cycle, especially when you've decided you can't control it or need to calm down first? She talks about spacers.
Yeah, things to interrupt the anxious thoughts. She's very honest about sometimes using alcohol in the past, not as a recommendation, obviously, but to illustrate the decision to interrupt the cycle, like deciding to just go to sleep to stop thinking.
Right, it's about creating a mental break. And there are healthier spacers, of course.
Loads. Deep breaths, yoga, meditation, exercise, sex, a hot bath, counting things.
Adult coloring books get a mention. Magnesium supplements. It's about finding what works for you.
And it addresses sadness, too, calling it hurting. The advice is self-care, allowing some time for it, but then actively trying to shift your mood.
Laughter is highlighted, isn't it? Like
Yeah.
actively seek out things you know will make you laugh. Watch a comedy, call a funny friend.
Definitely. And physical activity again for the serotonin boost. Get moving.
But a big warning against ostriching, right? Avoidance doesn't work long term.
No. Ignoring that weird mole or those overdue bills, it usually just makes the eventual problem much worse. It's not a solution.
So PHEW can be that bridge again. If you can't face the full problem yet, maybe take one small productive step related to it.
That could be a way to do it, yeah. Break the avoidance cycle with a small, helpful action.
So how does this look in practice? The author applies it to her own worries, right? Going through her list, asking, can I control it?
Yes, acknowledging, accepting, planning. And she talks about managing news overload, too, which feels very relevant now.
Oh, yeah. The idea of balancing negative news with something lighter, like a cute animal account online.
Exactly, like at Pepita the cat. It's about consciously managing your information diet, basically, not letting the negativity overwhelm you.
And there are funny examples of how overthinking creates problems that weren't even there. The clipboard, the Scientology mailing list.
Oh, yes. Our anxious minds can be very creative in finding things to worry about.
Have you ever done that? Worried intensely about something that just evaporated.
Oh, absolutely. We all do, I think.
Her story about taking those mystery pills in college. The panic versus actually just confessing to the professor.
It shows that often dealing with the thing, even if it's unpleasant, is less stressful than the endless anxiety about dealing with it.
Okay, so shifting to dealing with total shitstorms, things that are already happening, the feuding cousins at the wedding example.
Right. Assessing the likelihood of an actual fight, how imminent it feels, and then deciding whether to intervene, how and when. It's about strategic engagement, not just blind panic.
And part 3 of the book is apparently full of these scenarios, like losing your phone.
Yeah, using that to illustrate finding the RIO, the realistic ideal outcome.
Yeah.
What's the best realistic thing that can happen now? Okay, phone's gone. RIO is maybe getting it back, or barring that, minimizing the damage, canceling cards, backing up data if possible.
And then triaging what needs to happen first. Cancel the credit cards. Find my phone.
Exactly. Prioritize the actions.
And it revisits the freak-out faces in this context.
Yeah.
If you're freaking out with sadness, like the lost luggage.
The advice is acknowledge the sadness, but then actively try to reboot your mood. Self-care, find something funny, don't just wallow indefinitely.
And if it's anger, the empty luggage cart.
Recognize that ranting might feel good for a second, but doesn't help. Focus energy on the solution, finding the luggage, filing a claim.
And avoidance, the missing mascot example.
The imperative is take action, even a small step. The propose a trade idea is interesting here. Trade a task you hate for one you hate slightly less, just to get moving.
Like, I'll make that difficult phone call. Something else I don't want to do.
Something like that.
Ugh.
Just to break the inertia.
So wrapping up the dealing with it part, what are the big takeaways? Flexibility seems key.
Huge. Like the offer's cat, Gladys, things change, roll with it, adapt.
And focusing on, okay, now what? Instead of getting stuck on why me or whose fault is this?
Yes. Blame is usually a waste of precious energy. The laptop left in the taxi finding it is the goal, not figuring out who exactly messed up.
And applying that RIO and triage thinking to everyday stuff. Surprise house guests, angry bosses, broken printers.
Even drinking too much at a party, what's the RIO? Damage control, maybe apologizing. What's the first step? Hydrate. Send a text.
It covers tedious shit too, those mid-level annoyances.
Yeah, the stuff that drains you if you haven't conserved your freak-out funds. You need energy reserves for those.
The parking ticket example. You snooze, you lose your car. Stark reminder about avoidance.
Mm-hmm. And it tackles bigger things, too. Relationship feedback, broken bones, car accidents, tough diagnoses, divorce.
Always bring it back to,
Mm-hmm.
okay, this is happening. What are the logical steps I can take, even amidst the emotion?
Right. Acknowledging the difficulty, like trying to conceive, but still advocating for a thoughtful, proactive approach where possible.
Even the butter shortage in France gets a mention.
Tedious or major, depending on your croissant habit. It's about the practical response. Then things like moving termites, big stuff that pushes you firmly into the deal with it zone.
And the book goes even bigger, right? The mother of tarantulas.
Existential worry, the fear of death, basically. How smaller anxieties can sometimes spiral into that ultimate fear.
And dealing with truly awful news, shit that has already happened.
Acknowledging that feeling of injustice, that this isn't fair reaction, is normal. And
Right.
while controlling grief is, well, maybe impossible.
The practicalities, funerals, arrangements can actually provide a focus, a way to channel energy when everything feels overwhelming.
That's the idea presented. It gives the mind something concrete to work on.
And finally, specific tips for when you're already freaking out when the shitstorm hits. Sadness, reboot. Anger, don't make it worse. Avoidance, take one step.
Yeah, using that lost luggage example again to show different paths depending on your initial reaction, find a way back to dealing with it.
So the bottom line really seems to be, worry happens. It's part of being human.
Definitely. But we can change how we relate to it, how we manage it, understanding it, having strategies. That makes a difference.
The NoWorries Method, calm down, deal with it. And that central question, can I control it? It's a simple framework, but potentially really effective.
It gives you a process.
Yeah.
And that exercise of listing your worries and categorizing them, that seems like a really concrete first step someone could take.
Yeah, try it out. See where your worries actually fall on that probometer. Might be revealing.
Absolutely.
So, maybe a final thought to leave people with. Perhaps the goal isn't really to eliminate worry completely. I mean, the author herself probably still worries, right?
I'd imagine so.
But maybe the real power is in becoming more conscious about where we direct that mental energy, where we spend those freak-out funds, and maybe finding the humor in it sometimes, like the book does, that direct, slightly outrageous tone. Maybe that's a coping mechanism, too.
It could be. Sometimes laughing at the absurdity of worry is the best way to deflate it.